and welcome to Pleasure and Profits. I'm your host, Rachel Anzalone, and I'm super excited to bring you an incredible guest today whose mission is so aligned with my own and who brings really a depth of experience and wisdom around money mindset and abundance that I think we can all benefit from. My guest today is Alexandra Takeda. Alexandra is a coach and a mentor to women business leaders and entrepreneurs, helping them to master money mindset, own their worth, and take profitable action steps to create a bolder business and a bigger bottom line. I love the alliteration there. Her company has one clear mission: to help women become abundant, wealthy, and empowered. She's helped hundreds of clients across 5 continents use their soul's purpose to create massive impact and make meaningful money. She teaches the fundamental mindset shifts and practical business strategies that have helped her go from broke and overwhelmed to a massively abundant woman. We're going to talk about that for sure. And she brings her experience of 15 years as a corporate career, as a 6- and 7-figure earner, an author, a keynote speaker, coach, and CEO of 2 multiple 6-figure online businesses to help you and me up-level our money game. So like many teachers, many of our best teachers, Alexandra has done the work and continues to do the work. And so she has a lot of wisdom from experience that she's here to share a little bit of that with us today. So welcome to the show, Alexandra.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be talking about all of this good stuff together.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. We met not that long ago through our mutual friend, April Pertwee. And you and April have known each other a long time. And in preparation for this conversation, I was listening to your interview with her on her podcast, The Inside Story. And you started talking and you were talking about your experience growing up and how that sort of informed the money stories that you carried with you into your adult working life. And then you got into how you resolved that. But when you're telling your early life stories, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so much like me. We have the same experience. And so I'm super excited for you to share that. And we can talk a little bit about that. But and then you'll be like, oh, here's your money stories, Rachel, because I have this story of like, oh, I grew up this way. And the people I know who are wealthy didn't grow up that way. So I'm really excited for you to share this story of like where you came from and the beginning of how you got into doing this work around abundance for yourself, and then how you started to share it with other people.
Sure. And I'm trying to recall exactly what I shared there, but I'm not sure it really matters. But
No.
I think the origin of my story, when I actually started to do the healing work around my relationship with money, I started to explore what were all those things that had been encoded in my own, financial abundance thermostat, inside of my body. What were all the stories? What were the things that I learned growing up? And one of the earliest memories I had around money and the shaping of my own money story was when I was in kindergarten. I was 5 years old and I was very, very timid about school. I really was scared to go to school. And, people who know me now kind of think, oh my gosh, that's so crazy that you were like that. But I was definitely the kid who was clinging to my mom's leg, being dragged in. And I remember I would cry pretty much every single morning going into to kindergarten, at least for the first, month or so. And I remember my sister would kind of, walk in with us and then bolt up the stairs. Like, I got to get away from this, this crying child. and I had a friend in that class who would come out the door and coax me in every day. And I think I was just overwhelmed. I was barely turned 5 going into kindergarten. My mom was a single mom, been divorced since I was 2 years old. And I think I probably had other experiences of being left different places, and I didn't really like that, so there was sort of that element happening. But I remember one day I was carrying my dime in for lunch, and my lunch actually cost a dime because at that time I was on what was called the reduced lunch program. So it wasn't the sophisticated system that, kids have now, where it's the choice lunch and you log your credit card in and it just automatically deducts, right? Where I actually had to carry my dime into school and I had it in my pocket and somehow I lost it. And I remember feeling already like I was behind. Like there were charts on the wall where, kids had lost like 15 teeth and I hadn't lost any teeth yet. There were, I wasn't totally sure how to hold the pencil, all the things, I already felt behind and kind of different inside of that class. And then that particular day when I lost my dime, I got upset about it because I was thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm not going to be able to eat. And so I told my teacher, and she probably had just had one of those days where she was totally maxed out and couldn't handle the 30 kids in that class and just unloaded on me and pretty much in front of the whole class shamed me, made me, pointed me out as you can't even, hold on to your dime. And in that moment, everybody knew,
my
oh
heart
my
just breaks for
goodness,
that 5-year-old. Like that's that. Yeah.
you're the girl who only pays a dime and I pay $1.10. There was a real difference that was demarcated in that moment. And I think that was really the beginning of me thinking, oh, I'm different and I'm the poor kid and I don't have any money. And the way that our brains are work, this from neuroscience. It's just we start to implant evidence of we start to implant ideas of who we are and our identity, and then our brains are like constantly scanning the environment for that evidence to reinforce it. And that's really what happened for me. Not until my mid-20s did I really actually realize that I could change this story. This narrative could be different. I could create a completely fresh narrative with a much brighter future, and one that actually aligned with my desires and my dreams and my wants, and I was worth it. But up until then, I didn't believe that. I believed that little girl's story of you're poor, you're different, you don't deserve those things.
Yeah. So what I really identified with when I heard you telling that story was that I came from the same place. I came from a very poor rural town. My parents were divorced. I was on the reduced lunch program. I had mine was a quarter by the time I got there. It was a quarter for lunch. And there was sort of this dichotomy of like knowing that we didn't have money because most of the kids weren't on the reduced lunch program, right? And so that was kind of its own thing. And then also having no idea until really probably in my 30s of like what kind of money people really had out in the world, because even though we were poor in the town that we were in, everybody was pretty poor in the town that we were in. So there was just no concept of it was a county where to date, the average household income is like $36,000 a year. So it's really an extreme, I want to say an extreme low, but I think it's very common. And then you get into the world of like entrepreneurship and start being around people who just have an expectation that they're going to drive an Audi and they're going to have $1 million house. And it's just like, it's such a foreign world. It's like just walking into an entirely different culture. And there's an element of culture shock and of feeling like, oh, wait, I don't belong here because, these people are here because they grew up in these places, because they had, an Ivy League education, because they had these relationships or connections. Right. And so there's all this unlearning that has to happen. And so I love to hear your story of like having come from that place and created all this incredible abundance and success for yourself. And so how did you start to like unravel that and get into like shifting into a different place?
Sure. And just thank you for sharing that, because that's really helpful context just to know too. And it's interesting because I think I had two very distinct experiences, because my parents were divorced and I would spend my summers with my dad and my grandparents, and I would go visit him in Maine and where he was. And then he went back to graduate school at MIT when I was around 7, went to business school, and then created, a very abundant life for himself. And so I had two very distinct experiences in terms of what I was doing on a day-to-day basis with my mom and my sister, and where we were living during the school year, and then being with my dad and that experience. And even with both sets of my grandparents, there was more abundance. So I definitely had tastes of it, and pictures of it, but never fully being immersed in it. And
Yeah.
I think what happened to me was that I got pretty defensive, and and I think probably this is very common. What a lot of people do, rather than taking responsibility for your situation, you want to externalize it and blame it on everybody else and everything
Yeah.
else, right? It's the economy, it's their fault. I can't make money because of this or that. Or, in my case, I started to hold on to a lot of judgment and really negative opinions and thoughts about people with money. Well, they have all that, they're just like, they were just given that.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, everybody's living a human experience, and we all have ups and downs and things that are going really well and things that may not be going that well. And we have no idea what's happening inside of people's lives, right? We have no idea what they did to create whatever they've created.
Yeah.
And so the idea that I would be judging that is pretty preposterous, and honestly, kind of embarrassing, right? It's like, oh my gosh, so it wasn't until my mid 20s, when I was around 25, 26, that I started to realize that, if I ever wanted to get out of this sort of broke situation, I was going to have to do something about it. And that's around the time where I started to realize that my own thoughts, my own beliefs, my own perceptions, my actions were actually creating the entire dynamic of what I was living, and that I had to take responsibility for it. It wasn't like something externally was going to shift and then it was magically going to all work itself out. And it started with a series of different events, and sort of, after graduate school, making a pretty key decision in my life that I was going to go and like join the corporate world, and doing that, getting myself into a job where I still had so many different abundance blocks that I just worked myself to the bone, and was like, got an eye tick because I was so exhausted, and I was working like 80 hours a week. So even with my $60,000 salary or whatever, I mean, it equated to, minimum wage basically, if not less, right?
Same. I just want to say same. It was like, yay, I'm making all this money. Now I must work 12 hours a day in order to have earned the money that I'm getting paid.
Yeah. So I was still pretty much broke, even though I was working my rear end off. Right. That happened, so I was still blocking it. I was still blocking my abundance. I was not allowing myself to fully receive it, because there are ways to make a lot of money and not exhaust yourself. Right. It's not an either or. This your whole theme, pleasure and profit.
Pleasure and profit. Both. You could have both.
It is possible, right? Yeah. So that was happening. I quickly realized that, okay, something's got to give here. I need to reorganize, and actually took myself on a month-long meditation retreat, whole other conversation, but I had a massive awakening during that process. I don't think I'd ever meditated for more than like 20 minutes. I mean, I just didn't even know what that was. And I went to this thing that was, 10 hours, 11 hours of meditation a day. Total naivety. And it was incredible. I am convinced that without that, my life would not have taken the path it has taken, because there were just so many openings that were created for me, inside of that experience. And one of them just being that, wow, like I have all these thoughts that are going on. I could sit on the mat and have like a million thoughts going on. I could be in fear. I could be in joy. I could be in total anger about whatever was happening. I could start crying, and yet nothing was actually happening. I was literally sitting on this mat inside of this tent in the mountains of Colorado. So everything that I was feeling was just something that I was making up inside of my mind, inside of my imagination. And that was a true epiphany for me, because I realized, wow, like I am not my thoughts. I am the director of my thoughts. I am just observing them, but I actually have the conscious ability to control them. And so, I could go and spin out about this thing that could happen in the future, or reflect back about something in the past and be really angry about it. Or I could get super present and be in my body and actually be connected to the abundance that's here right now for me and be really grateful for it. And I could expand that feeling. And that was pretty revolutionary for me. There are a couple of other things that happened during that retreat that made me get really clear. I think one night I went out and spent the night on top of a mountaintop and did all these, like burn all the things that you don't want anymore, and create your factor intentions, and had a pretty powerful vision and dream. And the next morning went to my journal and spent, maybe like 4 or 5 hours writing everything that I was going to, what my new normal was. This is what I'm available for. This is what I am no longer available for. I'm not going to tolerate this kind of, whether it was behavior from, guys that I had dated, or, things that I wanted in my life. I just wrote it down, and I wrote pages and pages of it. I got really specific. And I'm convinced through that experience, my husband halfway across the United States heard it, and cracked open a window, and then came inside of came into my experience because of that. I'm convinced, because it was about, 2 months later, when I'd left that retreat, come back to my home in San Francisco, that I had started up a relationship with my now husband. And, about a month into that relationship, he gave me a really beautiful gift of a pearl necklace. And I remember feeling incredibly overwhelmed, totally grateful, very appreciative. And yet I wasn't able to express my appreciation to him. My whole throat was closing up. I was I was sweating. I was getting uncomfortable. My body was literally having this reaction to, the dialed up thermostat. I was my internal, set point was 60 degrees. And he, it was we had just taken the abundance meter up to 80, and I couldn't adjust to that level of receiving.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until probably the next day or that night or whatever, I sat with my discomfort and all the icky feelings of not really being able to fully receive his gift, and really just sat with okay, what is going on here? And it was I heard my higher self, God, basically tell me, you don't believe that you are worthy. And, you don't believe that you're deserving of all these things, but you are. And are you willing to change it? And so that was the moment. That was the moment, hands down, because that's when I realized, holy moly, this is not just about some broken relationship with money. This is about abundance. This is about allowing joy, pleasure, community, purpose, impact, friendships, love, wealth, healthy body, vibrance, you name it. This is about expansiveness, true beauty, letting myself dream. This is about all of the abundance. And if I don't deal with even just the basics of my money, there's no way I will let any of that other in. And that was the turning point for me.
Yeah. And then it was all fixed, right? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No.
So
I just wished up the millions, and there they were.
Yeah. And then you just were and we're good now. So I had a very similar experience with my husband, who I met, post-divorce at 38 years old. I reached the point where I was I'd been in this relationship that was really challenging for a lot of reasons. And then I left it, and I dated for a couple of years, and was just sort of just having fun and enjoying life. And then I just reached the point where I was I know what I want. And I went away for a weekend, and I made a little retreat for myself on the beach. I had a tent and a cooler and pen and paper. And I on that trip, I wrote exactly what I wanted, and not the kind of like superficial stuff that like he needs to be 6 foot tall. It's not that stuff, but like really who's the core of this person that I want to be with. And I met him 2 days later. No joke.
Amazing.
And then in our conversations, he said he really had reached that point too, where he was like, I'm tired of pretending to be something I'm not in order to make somebody else happy. I'm tired of trying to like accommodate all these things. Right. And so it was just this sort of magical coming together of two people who were like, here I am. Here's what I do. Either it works for you or it doesn't. And then pretty quickly, in a matter of months, I found myself trying to find problems with it because I was so uncomfortable being in a relationship that was easy that I was like trying to find something to fight about. I was like instigating and pushing, and I had to do the same thing. I sat down and I was like, what am I doing? What is going on here? And it was this like, you have never had it easy. You've never had a relationship with somebody who respects you and communicates, or, you know, that it's just easy to be around, that you're not sort of in some constant like tumult around. And I had to really like relearn or learn probably for the first time how to just be okay with things being like simple and easy to navigate and not having to like fight my way through something.
That's so powerful. So powerful.
Yeah.
And good for you for doing that and sitting with that. Because I think that's really the first piece, is that awareness. You know, it's like realizing that like, hey, there's something that I'm doing here that's actually not, it's not working for me, whether it's sitting quietly and just, you know, tuning in and listening, or, you know, asking yourself those hard questions. It's that awareness. And then because the thing is like, until we're aware of it, then we can't shift it. And our bodies have to feel safe. You know, we have this thermostat for what we'll allow in and what we'll let ourselves receive. And, you know, what we can receive is unlimited. Like it's, you know,
yeah,
there's not like
absolutely.
some cap, you know, there's not like some cap. It's like love or whatever, right? It keeps expanding. It's that whole saying, you know, the better it gets, the better it gets, right? It just does, right? It's this like delicious joyride that we can go on once we allow ourselves to do that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a lot of unlearning, you know, it was a lot of, I mean, I read like hundreds of books. I started listening to people. I went back and I got a coaching certification and, you know, did a lot of my own internal work. And I was honest about it too. I was really vulnerable, you know, in the, you know, in the disaster of my reaction to the pearl necklace. You know, I mean, I told, you know, my now husband, I apologized. I said, I'm sorry. You know, this is something I really need to work on. And will you help me? Are you willing to go on this journey with me? Because there really was no other way to go about it. You know, we both knew it happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And I just decided that honesty was the best way to go. And what I do want to say though, is that I felt like once I made the decision, things shifted really quickly for me. And that you know, once I decided that this was something I wanted to be different in my life, and that, yes, I was willing to accept, you know, accept that challenge that I was given by my higher self, by, you know, by spirit, to really step into my worth and step into my, you know, owning my value. It was like, you know, that was that commitment that just, you know, sealed it, you know? So then it was like, okay, every opportunity, everything that I was doing was an opportunity to practice that. And sometimes I didn't do it well or failed at it, but I just kept going. You know, I just kept recommitting, redeciding, yes, I'm doing this. And one of the things that, you know, that opened up for me was, at that point I was doing some consulting work, and, you know, wasn't charging, wasn't like, you know, it just, I was overworking, over delivering, under earning.
Yes.
Pretty typical.
Common story.
Yes. And because I still had all those blocks, but once I made that decision and shifted, it was like, oh, wait a second. There was like a boundary line that got drawn. You can't do that anymore. And I remember I got my first 6-figure contract within like 3 months. And so it was a massive shift. And then that opened up a whole other set of doors and experiences for me. And it wasn't like I went from zero to millions of dollars in the bank in 3 months, but what I did was I acclimatized myself gradually over the years to more and more, right? And to allowing in more. And it was basic at first, like when I was in college or graduate school, or even, before committing to this work, like, I would never have taken myself out to a nice dinner. I would, I had like a budget of like $10, when I was in grad school to go to dinner, because I had like literally like $100 extra spending money, and that was it.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was simple stuff like, oh, you can go to a nice dinner. Or, we lived in San Francisco. I was like, oh, we could go up to Napa and spend a weekend and like go to the wine country. I mean, it was like, even stuff that didn't cost anything, allowing in more compliments, just the basics. It was all of this stuff that was adding up, that was gradually allowing my body to feel safe, turning that internal thermostat up, right? And gradually shifting, because I had done all that meditation work and really, had that epiphany about my thoughts too. It was shifting my thoughts, shifting my beliefs, shifting my perceptions, realizing that no, people with money aren't bad people. Money doesn't actually change anybody. It just like amps up what you already are, and it just magnifies it. And so if you're generous, you're just going to be more generous. And so accepting that, I think just like melted a lot of the heaviness and the stress for me, and really helped me realize that it wasn't, I don't know, that like money is just this made up thing. It's like just a value, we use it to trade value, right? For things that we value, right? It's like, okay, I want to buy this phone. How much does it cost, right? Money is just the exchange. It's the currency that we're using. And that to me also was really relieving. It was like that dropped the pressure too, that it was just totally neutral. I came into an understanding that money's not good or bad. And so then for me, it was like, oh, I just got to master my own energy and my own emotions and my own thoughts about it.
Yeah, it really is an internal project. It's not, I read somewhere in your website, when your posts and email, you said something about, people wonder why they're not earning or why they don't have the abundance. And they think it's because they don't have the right business or marketing strategy, but it's not about your business or marketing strategy. Like there is, and I agree, like there is like a fundamental level of like, you need to have some tools and you need to have some basics, but I've seen people do exceptionally well financially with the worst website, with like objectively, they're just sending out a Gmail. They don't have a funnel. They don't have all these sort of bells and whistles that everybody thinks you need to have. And it's because they have a level of like confidence and belief in the value of what they're providing, that just they open their mouth and they speak, and people are, they respond with yes, I want that. Yes, that has value to me.
They're magnetized by it because it is magnetic. They have an energetics about them that says, this is what I do. I'm owning my worth. I'm owning my value. I'm here to provide value, which in turn is going to return more value, right? Bring more value into their lives. And they're not externalizing it, which I think is key. And I think, even before we started press record, we were talking about that. It's like people think that it's some external thing. When I make this amount, or once I have this set up, once I've got my perfect website, then the money is going to come. No, it's setting it inside first, and then all of that then gets reflected out energetically, right? And we have to, it's also just, in general, I think people give way too much power to money. It's like, we think that money is going to solve all our problems. We think it's going to, you know, fix it all. And yes, there's a lot of things that money affords that can bring us more choices and options and things like that. But in general, it's just giving way too much power to money. We have to kind of put it in right order, and we have to decide to feel the way that we want to feel first.
Yes.
So if you want to be abundant, like you got to feel abundant. You got to find ways to feel abundant in your life, whether that's just drinking a simple, cup of tea, or making yourself a coffee with frothed milk in the morning, or, going for a walk, or taking yourself out to West Texas and hiking, whatever it is, get that feeling in your body. Think about all the things that you desire. You want more clients, you want a handbag. Like, what's the emotion? What's the feeling that thing is going to give you? Figure out how to feel that way first. That way, when the thing comes, you'll actually be able to receive it. You'll actually be able to let it in. You'll have primed all the receptors in your brain to actually say, yes, please, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, that focus on feeling good first. So this is a conversation I have often that's like, especially with people who are healers and helpers and want to be of service and have big hearts, that there's this idea of needing to like do the work, create the impact. And then once I've done that, then I can make the money. Then the money will come. And then once the money's come, then I'll feel good. And it just doesn't work that way. Like
No.
you really have to, there has to be a balance and a combination of the three, and really learning how to cultivate that feeling of joy, satisfaction, pleasure, like whatever it means to you to feel really good and to feel abundant, then contributes to your ability to create more abundance and to have more impact. That they're all intertwined, and you can't separate them or focus on one before the other to the extent of your well-being or the extent of your happiness. It just doesn't pan out that way, generally speaking.
No, it doesn't. And it's yeah, you got to decide how you want to feel. Like, how are you going to feel once you've got that money?
Yeah.
Get into that place of feeling there now, and then start taking the actions that move you there. And, one of the tools that I love working with women around is this, future self abundant woman version of you, really getting into the embodiment of her now, using that future wisdom. Because in my mind, there's always there's not just this sort of physical timeline that we're on. There's also this, spiritual dimension of timelines where, that version of you already exists out there. She's already done all the things. She's already, that big vision that's in your heart, she's already created it. So taking her perspective and then applying it back in your own life. What are the decisions she's making? How is she attentive to her money? What systems does she have set up that are managing her, financial well-being? How is she interacting with her clients? How would she come to the sales presentation? What are the marketing messages that really resonate with her? How would she be carrying her body? What would she be dressing like? How would she be going about the day-to-day of her work? How would she be going into the grocery store, enjoying her life while she's picking out the vegetables and the fruits that she loves? All encompassing, how do you really be her now and bring that wisdom into your now moment so that you're actually operating from that most abundant perspective of you, rather than the limited version of you that might still be wondering and worrying about stuff and am I good enough? No. Bring the version of you that knows she's good enough, right? That knows she's worth it, that is not afraid to value her work and charge the price that, that's exciting, even if it's a little bit terrifying.
Yes. I actually literally just published today a podcast. It'll be a couple weeks before this comes out, but about how fear and excitement actually feel the same in your body. Yes. And you get to choose if you're going to be excited or be fearful, but it's not, the feeling's the same. The feeling and the physiology of what happens is the same. One area that I think is sticky for a lot of women is around time.
Mm.
And I recently was listening to somebody who's incredibly successful, and has a huge business, has a massive following, massive audience. She's a teacher of many, and I heard her say, somebody asked the question, um, is it if I start doing this stuff, social media, email, like these kind of marketing things, what if I need to stop for a little while? And she responded, you can't. And my heart just broke. I was like, oh, there's thousands of women listening to this, and they just heard somebody really successful tell them that they can't stop. And I see this a lot, this kind of like, I have to do it right now, because if I don't do it right now, the opportunity will be gone. Or I need to get on this. I need to take care of this immediately, because there's this sort of time urgency. And one of the things that I've really been playing with, especially the last couple of years, is like, but is there a time urgency? Like, what if I just waited 24 hours? What if I just let this opportunity go? If I'm not ready, if I don't have the money in my bank account to buy it now, can I just trust that the timing's going to come when I do have the money, and I feel good making the investment, instead of like stretching myself or overextending myself in a way that's not healthy? Can I trust that I'll get the opportunity to do that thing tomorrow, next week, next month, instead of pushing myself to a point of exhaustion because today's the only day that it can happen? And what I found is that it always works out when I don't push myself too hard.
I have so much to say about that, and I 100% agree with you. And I'm of the belief set that there's like constantly another ship pulling into port. So if
Yeah.
you miss that one, like here comes the next one.
Yeah.
And I have found, and I've actually been playing with this concept around, there really is like, there's a real difference between when we go with God versus we try to like force it,
Yes.
and that misalignment. And I don't know about you, but my experience every single time is when I go into something and I don't have that alignment up front, it doesn't work out, because it's probably me trying to like force the plan versus allowing the plan to unfold, right? And with the divine timing. And generally, when we're forcing things, then we get exhausted. We over, work ourselves. We burn out and get sick. We somehow subconsciously or semi-consciously sabotage ourselves, again, because we've got that thermostat. We're reaching for 80 degrees, but we're set at 60. And that push, we're like trying to push ourselves up to 80, but our body's like, wait, no, this isn't safe. And then takes us back down, even if we don't realize we're doing it. Right. And it could just be like an illness or whatever that takes us out. Whereas when we let ourselves get into alignment first, take the day, and then make the decision the next one after we've really had time to sit with it, we're not forcing it, because then we actually can listen to the wisdom. We can discern, spirit's voice, and be like, oh, no, I'm not supposed to do that. And then lo and behold, 2 days later, some other opportunity shows up that you're like, well, thank God I didn't take that thing, because then this wouldn't have been available to me, or I would have had to back out of that, right? There's all that kind of dynamic that's happening. So I don't subscribe to that, even around social media. I mean, I've certainly taken times where it's like I get really active and then I'm like, and I think you have to follow the natural rhythms of your body. You have to follow the natural rhythms of your intuition, of your own alignment, and the seasons that you're in your life. Sometimes it's just not ideal to go push.
Yeah.
Yes, there might be a period where you have to, I'm not saying like no action. I always feel like there's a little bit of treading there of like, I do believe you have to take action. You have to offer your work out into the world. You have to be vocal about what it is that you do. You have to get out there and be visible and present, but you can do it in a way that feels really in alignment and doesn't feel exhausting.
Yes. I've heard two sayings that I always like come back in my mind. One is, while you pray, move your feet. So it's not just, I'm not just going to like sit and visualize, like I also have to take action. Right.
Yeah.
And then the other is do the best you can every day, no more, no less. And so learning what it means to be doing more than your best or less than your best is that where you develop that discernment to say, this is just enough. I did just enough. If I do another hour, I'm going to have pushed too hard. I saw a post recently on Facebook in a group that I'm in, and it was definitely a man who posted it. And it said something about if you're feeling guilty, or I think it was about if you're feeling guilty, it's probably because you're not doing enough. Does this resonate with you? And every man was like, yes, yes, yes. Whenever I'm feeling guilty, it's because I've been lazy. I've been taking naps. And every woman was like, nope. That is not my problem.
I'm overdoing it already.
I'm overdoing it all the time. I don't feel guilty because I'm not doing enough. I feel guilty because I'm taking care of everybody else and not me and not my priorities. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Most women are taking care of a lot of other people, whether they have kids or not. And yeah, that is just, prioritizing everybody else and leaving yourself for last is kind of a massive abundance block that I see.
Yeah.
A lot of women getting into, and I've been guilty of it myself, and I repeat it and I have to work on it and remember it and,
yeah.
and then expand again, and that's it, that's the work. It's like, we're all in it.
Yeah.
I teach all this stuff, but like, I'm doing it too. I'm in the work. I'm still in the work of expanding my capability of receiving. Yes, I've received a tremendous amount. I have created a massively abundant life. There's miraculous things that have happened inside of my life. And I'm still in the work of learning how to expand my own ability to receive and not, pinch it off or close off to it, or the nuances of, not overworking myself or, giving so much that then I get into that resentful place. It's a continuous journey.
Yeah, you said something in the interview I was listening to with April about having to like relearn lessons over and over again. And I heard that and I was like, oh, I feel like that was for me, because I get in this loop sometime where I'm like, yeah, but I know that already. Yeah, but I know I've read that book. I did that thing. I already know that. But there is so much to be gained. And it was a good reminder to be like, okay, but I didn't read that book from the place I am now. I read that book from the place I was 10 years ago. And now it's a new limit that I'm trying to move through. Now it's a new block or a new version of that old block. Like that the things come back up and you have to continue to work through it. You don't just do the work once and then you're done.
No, there's a next level of expansion. There's a next level of integration. There's a next level of embodiment that is possible. And I've heard it phrased, and I don't know who, I wish I could give them credit. I'm not quite sure who has said this, but next level, same old devil.
Yeah.
So, the stuff that I've had to learn continuously is pretty much always the same thing, just a different iteration of it, or a different, level of it, or, a bigger expansion is possible with this small little shift. Yeah. And a lot of times, I think there's a real beauty in just giving ourselves grace through those moments and not getting down on ourselves, but really cheering ourselves on through them. Here we are again.
Yeah, it means I'm up leveling. It means I'm growing. If it's not, if you don't have those moments come up, then it means
expanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what may have taken me months of, think about it. Like it took me 25 years to figure the first thing out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then it was quick, now it's like something that would have spun me out for a month, shrunk down to like, oh, now I'm just like working through this for a week. Or now it can be, then it could be like maybe 24 hours of like, the chaos to this just kind of took me off track for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
or, oh, I caught myself right away thinking that way that I think that's not productive, or wanting to do something, or, for me, it's always things like not asking for help and trying to do stuff all by myself. I'm still
Yes.
constantly relearning that one. Having come from where I came from, I'd had to be extremely independent. There was a lot of approval. There was a lot of like recognition. There was, all the accolades, everything was earned through, grinding it out and doing it myself.
Oh,
And so I
yes.
have to like continuously remind myself, I am not alone.
Yeah.
God is with me. There's a whole entire invisible universe of like angels and helpers here to, ancestors to usher me through and support me. I have got my family. I have team, like on my, in my work, I have a team. I mean, there's like so much help that is available.
Yeah.
Why am I trying to do this on my own? Right? I have to remind myself of that often. And sometimes it's literally just a quick little, nope, flip the switch. How would the most abundant version of Alexandra do this? And then move forward that way. Versus, I might have gotten hung up on it and exhausted myself and gotten sick, when I
Yeah.
first was grappling with that. And sometimes I still do.
Yeah, I think that's I completely resonate with that in so many ways, that like, being patted on the back for being mature and responsible, and for not ever needing help, and for taking care of things is a great way to make yourself a really, really hard worker. And then there's all this unlearning to do around that. Being really capable was like, oh, you're so capable. And then needing to unlearn a lot of that stuff. And then just learning to trust and learning to know that you're not alone. There is support, and learning faster and faster. I feel like that's one of the things that I've seen for myself. As you said, it's like, oh, I would have gone for a week down that rabbit hole, and now I can recognize it, and now I can have the conversation with the person and say, actually, I know I said this, but I need to revisit that. We need to revisit, because that actually doesn't feel good, and be able to have those conversations that I would just have stuck it out in the past.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that's really one of the fun things about this work, and I'm sure it is for you too, is just when you're working, and coaching with people is being able to share authentically your own experience with it. And then also, because I am in the work, I'm also, I'm really, and I've done most of the things that
Yeah.
people are going to do in terms of blocking their abundance. It's really easy for me to see that for people, and then also to help ask them questions and tap them into their own wisdom so that they can make different choices for themselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That wisdom of experience that you bring, I think is so valuable, and something that we only get by doing it, and we get by doing it for 20 years. We get by doing it for a long time, and that's so much value that you bring to the table for anybody who works with you. So do you want to share with us how people can connect with you, how they can
Sure.
find you online?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Excuse me. My website is alexandratakeda.com. So it's just my name, and I'm sure we can link to it in the show notes. But if you
Absolutely.
click on there, there's a whole section with freebies. It's alexandratakeda.com/freebie. And there are many different abundance tools that are there available. I have some trainings. I have a series of meditations and activations that I've recorded that are really beautiful. I've had thousands of women download those, and they're really different. There are much more, a lot of them are set to rhythmic music. You can take them outside on a walk, go for a jog with them, go for a hike, or sit quietly, put your headphones on. They're pretty magic. And probably one of the best ways that I have found to shift that internal thermostat, just to create that sense of safety in our bodies that allows us to start to gradually acclimatize ourselves to, being better receivers of all the abundance. So, that's the best way. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, all under my name. And yeah, I would love to connect and love to be able to give some of those free resources out.
Awesome. I will definitely link to all those places in the show notes. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think we could talk for 10 hours, but we better wrap it up.
I agree. I agree. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me. And I've loved being here and having this conversation together.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening. Until next time, I'm wishing you even more pleasure and profits. I'll see you soon.